The peaceful silence of space was shattered as the alien fleet arrived. For months, there had been rumors of an invasion, but no one had believed it. Earth, after all, had faced many threats before, and each time, humanity had stood strong. But this time was different. The alien race, known as the Vetheri, were unlike anything humanity had encountered. They were tall and imposing, with dark, armored bodies that seemed to absorb the light around them. Their ships, sleek and powerful, filled the skies above Earth. The Vetheri were known across the galaxy for their ruthless conquest of worlds. Every species they had encountered before had fallen, their planets burned to ash, and their people wiped out. Humanity was no exception, or so the Vetheri thought. As the Vetheri launched their assault, they unleashed their most powerful weapon. Energy blasts capable of disintegrating entire cities. The first strike hit Washington, D.C., and the city vanished in an instant. Buildings, people, everything, gone in a flash. The people of Earth watched in horror as the destruction spread across the globe. No one was safe. The Vetheri didn't just want Earth. They wanted to wipe humanity from existence. The world's leaders quickly gathered in underground bunkers. The President of the United States, along with the leaders of every other nation, discussed their options, but none of them had an answer. The Vetheri's weapons were unlike anything they had ever seen. The most advanced Earth technology was useless against them. Even the most powerful shields and armor could do nothing to stop the energy blasts. Yet, something strange happened. As the Vetheri continued their attack, they noticed something unusual. The humans, unlike the other species they had conquered, weren't dying as quickly as they had expected. The energy weapons they had unleashed were not having the same devastating effects on Earth's people. Some humans were injured, of course, but many seemed to survive the blasts. They weren't falling apart or crumbling into dust like other species. No one could understand why. Back in Earth's war rooms, scientists and military leaders began to put together a theory. Human bodies, it seemed, were different. While other species had fragile biology, Earth's people had an incredible ability to adapt. They could endure injuries, heal quickly, and most importantly, adapt to energy-based attacks. Their cells seemed to have a natural resistance to the type of radiation emitted by the Vetheri weapons. The news spread quickly, and soon everyone on Earth realized the impossible truth. Humanity was surviving where others would have perished. While entire cities had been reduced to rubble, people in other places seemed to withstand the blast. Even those who were caught in the initial waves of destruction were healing at an astonishing rate. Some were barely scared by the weapons that would have vaporized anyone else. But why? As the Vetheri watched in disbelief, they began to understand the reality. Humanity was not like any species they had ever encountered. They had a unique resilience, a genetic gift that allowed them to survive what should have been certain death. The Vetheri had never faced a species with such an ability. In the past, they had easily wiped out entire civilizations with their energy weapons. But now, the humans were standing strong. Despite this, the Vetheri were not about to give up. They had never failed in their conquests, and Earth's strange resistance only made them more determined. They quickly adjusted their tactics, increasing the frequency and intensity of their attacks. They would crush humanity, they thought. The energy weapons had to work eventually. It was just a matter of time. On the ground, people were beginning to fight back. The unexpected survival of the human race gave them hope. Soldiers, civilians, scientists, and even farmers picked up arms and began to unite. With every passing day, more humans discovered that they could endure the attacks. The energy weapons didn't break them. They fought not just to survive, but to protect their world. The Vetheri, still observing Earth from their ships, were perplexed. Why weren't the humans dying? How could they survive the very thing that had destroyed so many other species? The answer was clear. Humanity had something that the Vetheri had overlooked. They had an adaptability that no one could predict, a resilience that could not be measured by normal standards. and this gave humanity a fighting chance. Meanwhile, the people of Earth were organizing. They didn't have the luxury of time. The Vetheri were relentless. Every hour that passed brought more destruction. But the longer the battle went on, the more the humans began to understand their enemy. They studied the Vetheri, analyzing their technology and weapons, searching for any weakness. The world's scientists worked day and night to develop countermeasures, while the military prepared for an all-out war. Earth's people were no longer just fighting to survive. They were fighting back. Rachel Daniels, a commander in the Earth Defense Force, stood on the front lines, staring up at the sky. She could see the alien ships hovering above, the massive weapons charging up for another round of destruction. But this time, she wasn't afraid. She knew that humanity had something the Vetheri didn't understand: the will to survive, the strength to fight, and the power to adapt to whatever came their way. "The Vetheri think they can wipe us out," she said, her voice steady as she turned to her team. "But they haven't seen what we're truly capable of. We will fight them, and we will win." The battle for Earth was just beginning. The fate of humanity would be decided in the coming days, and the Vetheri would soon learn that humans were not so easy to destroy. The world was waking up to the harsh reality of war. What had started as a single devastating attack on Earth's cities had now escalated into a full-scale battle. As the Vetheri continued their assault, Earth's defense systems scrambled to react. But nothing could have prepared humanity for what was coming next. The Vetheri fleet loomed overhead, their ships filling the skies like dark clouds. Their weapons were powered by an advanced form of energy that had proven impossible to stop. Each blast from their ships could obliterate entire buildings, and they showed no signs of slowing down. But Earth wasn't going to stand idly by. The humans had one advantage the Vetheri didn't count on: their survival. It was Commander Rachel Daniels who first realized that humanity's resilience wasn't just a fluke. It was a weapon in itself. The human ability to adapt was more than just an impressive biological trait. It was a shield. The more the Vetheri fired, the stronger humanity became. At first, it was just a theory. But as the human military forces began to push back, it became clear the Vetheri had underestimated Earth. The first major battle took place just outside the ruins of New York City. The Vetheri had sent in their ground forces, using energy cannons that could vaporize anything in their path. The streets of New York, already decimated by the earlier bombings, were now filled with the sound of gunfire and explosions as Earth's last defenders fought to hold the line. Rachel Daniels stood in the middle of the chaos, directing her troops as they launched counterattacks against the alien forces. She was no stranger to battle, but this was unlike anything she had ever seen. The Vetheri were relentless, their energy weapons causing destruction wherever they went. But she could feel something shift in the air, a quiet understanding among her soldiers that the Vetheri were not invincible. "Stay focused," Rachel shouted into her comm device. "We can take them down, but we need to work together." Her voice cut through the panic that was spreading among her troops. The soldiers, though scared, were determined. They had seen what the Vetheri could do, but they had also seen what their fellow humans were capable of: surviving, adapting, and pushing forward no matter the odds. The first major victory came when a squadron of Earth's Air Force pilots managed to use their energy-based weapons, adapted to the Vetheri's technology, to disable one of the alien warships. The ship crashed into the ocean, sending shockwaves across the battlefield. It was a small victory, but it was enough to prove that the Vetheri were not invincible. The Vetheri leader, known as Tyrak, watched from his command ship in rage. He had never encountered a species that could adapt so quickly. The humans had shown resilience beyond his understanding. His fleet had taken heavy casualties, and the ground forces had been pushed back in several key areas. The energy weapons he had relied on for so long weren't as effective as they had been on other planets. Tyrak was furious, but he was also beginning to realize that Earth wasn't just another planet to conquer. It was different, and if he wasn't careful, humanity might prove to be his greatest challenge yet. But Tyrak was not a leader who gave up easily. He ordered his fleet to intensify the assault, sending in more reinforcements and stronger weapons. It was clear that the Vetheri had underestimated Earth's resistance, and now they were determined to crush the humans completely. Back on the ground, Rachel and her soldiers were preparing for the next wave. They knew the Vetheri wouldn't stop until they were either victorious or Earth was completely destroyed. But the longer they fought, the more they understood about their enemy. The Vetheri's technology was formidable, but it had one weakness. It relied on energy. And humanity, it seemed, had an uncanny ability to adapt to and even harness energy in ways the Vetheri hadn't considered. "We've got one shot at this," Rachel said, gathering her team around a makeshift war table. "We need to find a way to use their energy against them. We've seen how their weapons work. We can turn it around. But we need to act fast." Her plan was simple: use the Vetheri's own technology to create a counterattack. They had already begun reverse engineering their weapons, studying the energy emissions, and adapting human technology to neutralize their deadly effect. But they needed to act quickly before the Vetheri could launch their next wave of destruction. The next few hours were a blur of strategy and chaos. The Vetheri had launched another wave of attack, this time with even more powerful energy weapons. But humanity had learned from the first battle. As the Vetheri ships descended from the sky, the human forces unleashed their newly adapted weapons. The results were immediate. The Vetheri warships that had once been untouchable now began to fall from the sky, one after another. The energy blasts were no longer affecting the humans the same way. Instead, they were bouncing off the new shields humans had created, or being absorbed and redirected back toward the Vetheri. Tyrak watched in disbelief as his ships were destroyed in rapid succession. His mind raced as he tried to find a way to stop the humans. This was not supposed to happen. His fleet, his weapons, none of it was working. And now the humans were fighting back with their own energy weapons, turning the tide of battle. For the first time, Tyrak felt fear. Not fear for his life, but fear of the unknown. He had always believed that his species was the most powerful in the galaxy, that nothing could stand in their way. But the humans had shattered that illusion. They had proven that they could not only survive against his energy weapons, they could adapt and fight back. The battle raged on, but now the Vetheri were on the defensive. Humanity had made its first significant stand, and it wasn't just surviving, it was winning. The battle had shifted. Earth had shown the Vetheri that they were not the fragile, weak species the aliens had expected. Humanity had proven its resilience and its ability to adapt. And now, with the momentum on their side, humans were ready to take the fight to the Vetheri. But while Earth's defenders celebrated their first victories, the aliens were regrouping, preparing for a war they had never thought would be necessary. Commander Rachel Daniels watched as Earth's forces gathered for what would be the most important mission of their lives. The Vetheri were ruthless, but they were not invincible. The more the humans fought, the more they understood their enemy's weaknesses. The question now was how to use that knowledge to their advantage. The clock was ticking, and every moment brought the Vetheri closer to realizing just how dangerous humanity had become. Rachel stood in the war room, surrounded by generals and scientists. The mood was tense, but there was a spark of hope. The unexpected victory had given humanity a fighting chance, but it wasn't enough. The Vetheri fleet was still out there, larger and stronger than anything humanity had ever faced. They could not rely on just surviving anymore. The time for defense was over. "We need to go on the offensive," Rachel said, her voice steady but determined. "We've taken the first step, but now we need to hit them hard. We need to make them understand that Earth will not bow to anyone." One of the generals spoke up. "We've been analyzing their tactics, and it's clear that they're still underestimating us. They believe that humanity's resistance is just luck. They don't know we've adapted. It's time we show them what we're really capable of." Rachel nodded. "We'll need everything we've got, every soldier, every weapon, and every ounce of energy we can harness. This is no longer just about survival. It's about taking back our world. The plan was set in motion. Earth's military forces, now armed with new energy-based weapons and shields, prepared to launch a full-scale attack on the Vetheri fleet. The Vetheri had learned to fear the humans, but they had not yet realized just how far Earth's forces were willing to go to protect their planet. The stakes had never been higher, and the fate of humanity now rested on their shoulders. Meanwhile, the Vetheri, although shaken, were far from defeated. Tyrak, the Vetheri leader, was seething with rage. His fleet had suffered significant losses, but he had no intention of allowing humanity to defeat them. The defeat had been humiliating, but it had also forced him to rethink his strategy. The humans' ability to adapt was both an advantage and a curse for them. Tyrak knew that he couldn't just send wave after wave of energy blasts. He needed a new tactic, one that would break the humans' resistance once and for all. "We underestimated them," Tyrak muttered to himself, staring out at the vast expanse of space. "But we will not make the same mistake again." He turned to his advisors. "Prepare the weapons we've been saving for just this occasion. We will show them the true power of the Vetheri. They will know fear." The Vetheri leader's resolve was clear. The humans had become a real threat, and Tyrak was determined to extinguish that threat before it could grow any further. He had made a costly mistake, but he wasn't going to make it again. Earth would be theirs, one way or another. Back on Earth, the military was ready. The first wave of attacks was launched, and soon the battle was raging once again. This time, however, it wasn't just about surviving. It was about pushing the Vetheri back. The humans fought with everything they had. They were no longer just defending their homes. They were fighting for their very existence. The skies above Earth were filled with the roar of combat. The Vetheri ships, massive and menacing, fired their powerful energy weapons, trying to break through the Earth's defenses. But humanity had learned. The humans counterattacked with their own energy weapons, and the Vetheri warships began to falter. The tide of the battle had begun to turn. Humanity was no longer the underdog. It was becoming the aggressor. Rachel led her forces into the heart of the Vetheri fleet. Her strategy was simple: hit hard, hit fast, and never stop moving. They had the element of surprise, and they needed to use it to their advantage. As she coordinated the strike from the ground, she could feel the weight of the mission pressing down on her. This was it, the moment they had all been preparing for. The battle raged for hours. The Vetheri fought back with fury, but their previous overconfidence was now shattered. The human resistance was unlike anything they had encountered before. The energy blasts they had once relied on were now being turned against them, their own weapons reflecting back with deadly accuracy. But even as the Vetheri were pushed back, they were not finished. They had one final ace up their sleeve, a weapon that had been kept in reserve for a moment, just like this. It was a massive energy cannon, capable of vaporizing entire fleets. It was the last resort, the weapon that would obliterate humanity's forces and restore the Vetheri's superiority. Tyrak watched from his command ship as his fleet continued to falter. But with the energy cannon primed, he knew that victory was within his grasp. All he needed was one final shot to end this war once and for all. Back on Earth, the humans had no idea what was coming. Rachel and her soldiers fought with everything they had, but the Vetheri's weapon was unlike anything they had ever seen. It was huge, capable of wiping out entire battalions in a single blast. If they didn't act quickly, the war would be over, and humanity would be wiped from existence. But the humans had one thing the Vetheri didn't: unity. The Earth Defense Force was stronger than ever, and they were determined to win, no matter the cost. The energy cannon was primed, its vast power capable of eradicating everything in its path. Tyrak stood at the helm of his command ship, watching as the massive weapon powered up. The moment had come. He could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him, the weight of the future of his people. The humans had shown themselves to be a worthy adversary, but now he would show them the true might of the Vetheri. Rachel Daniels was deep in thought, standing alongside her team of commanders as they strategized their next move. They knew the Vetheri were regrouping, and they could sense something big was coming. The massive explosions in the distance and the growing intensity of the battle told them all they needed to know. The Vetheri were preparing to unleash their final weapon. "Commander," one of her officers said urgently, his voice tinged with concern. "We've detected a massive energy surge. It's coming from their flagship. It's bigger than anything we've ever seen. We think they're about to launch a devastating attack." Rachel's eyes narrowed. She had expected the Vetheri to respond with something desperate, but this was more than she had anticipated. She had seen how their weapons could vaporize entire cities, but this was different. This was an extinction-level event. "We don't have much time," Rachel muttered, turning to her team. "We need to stop that cannon, or this whole fight is over. I'm not about to let Earth fall just because we didn't act fast enough." The team quickly set to work. They had developed a countermeasure, a specially designed EMP bomb capable of disabling the Vetheri's energy weapons. But it was a risky move. They would need to get close enough to the flagship to deploy it, and that meant they would have to face down the Vetheri's entire fleet in a direct confrontation. "We'll have to make a run at their flagship," Rachel said, her voice calm but determined. "It's going to be dangerous, but we don't have another choice. We need to take the fight to them. Now." The plan was set in motion. Earth's forces mobilized for one last, all-out assault. The Vetheri had pushed them to the edge. But humanity's resolve was unyielding. They were fighting for their survival, for their future, and for everything they held dear. The thought of surrender was not an option. As the human ships blasted through space, Rachel's mind raced. She had led humanity's resistance, but this was the ultimate test. It wasn't just about stopping the Vetheri. It was about proving that humanity could overcome even the greatest odds. The EMP bomb was their best hope, but it would only work if they could get close enough to deploy it. Meanwhile, Tyrak's fleet was preparing for the final strike. His warships were closing in on Earth's defenses, ready to unleash the weapon that would end this conflict once and for all. The cannon, a technological marvel of unimaginable power, hummed with energy. Tyrak's fingers hovered over the controls, ready to fire. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Both sides knew this was the decisive moment. Earth had the EMP bomb, but would they be able to deliver it? The Vetheri had the power to obliterate humanity with a single shot, but would they succeed in firing it before the humans reached them? Rachel gritted her teeth as her ship rocketed through the sky, her crew working in perfect synchrony. The seconds felt like hours as they navigated the treacherous space battlefield, dodging Vetheri energy blasts and weaving between the enemy ships. The EMP bomb had to be deployed in a precise spot, a narrow window of opportunity that would last only moments. Any misstep could cost them everything. "Commander," one of her officers called out, "we're almost in position. Get ready." The intensity in the air was palpable. The EMP bomb had been the result of hours of research and countless sacrifices. It was the last hope for humanity. And now, in the heart of the storm, they had to make it count. The Vetheri flagship loomed ahead, its massive size intimidating even from a distance. As Rachel's ship neared it, she could see the cannon charging up, its energy pulses lighting up the dark void of space. Tyrak's ship was preparing to fire, and the Vetheri soldiers were readying themselves for what they believed would be the final blow. But Rachel had a plan. Her ship surged forward, pushing itself to its limits as she ordered her team to make their final approach. The countdown in her mind seemed to echo louder with each passing second. She could see the cannon glowing brighter and brighter. "Now," she commanded. With precision, the EMP bomb was released, hurtling toward the Vetheri flagship. It was a desperate move, but it was all they had. The bomb was designed to disable all energy-based systems in a wide radius. If it hit its target, it would cripple the Vetheri's weapons and give Earth's forces the chance to strike back. The EMP bomb flew through space, cutting through the void like a streak of light. Tyrak, unaware of the humans' approach, prepared to fire the cannon. But just as he pressed the button, a flash of light erupted from the EMP bomb, and the entire Vetheri flagship shook violently. The cannon sputtered and died, its systems completely disabled by the shockwave. The Vetheri fleet faltered. The once mighty energy weapon had been rendered useless, and now the Vetheri were vulnerable. "No!" Tyrak screamed, his rage echoing across the communications channels. His flagship, his last hope for victory, had been destroyed in an instant. The Vetheri fleet, stunned by the sudden loss of their most powerful weapon, was now exposed. Rachel's face hardened with determination. This was their moment. They had struck the Vetheri down, and now Earth would have its chance to win. The battle was not over, but the tide had shifted once and for all. "Let's finish this," she said, as humanity's forces prepared to push forward with everything they had. The moment of victory had arrived, but it wasn't without cost. Earth's forces, though victorious in disabling the Vetheri flagship's most powerful weapon, had taken heavy casualties. The fight was far from over. Tyrak was not one to accept defeat easily, and as his flagship faltered, he quickly redirected his remaining forces. The Vetheri were a fierce, relentless species. This battle would only intensify. Rachel stood in the command center, gazing out at the chaos unfolding in space. The EMP bomb had worked, but the Vetheri were regrouping. She could see their ships rearranging, preparing for their final retaliation. The EMP had disabled the cannon, but it hadn't destroyed the fleet. The Vetheri were regrouping, and the battle was far from over. "Commander, we've lost several ships," one of her officers reported, his voice grave. "But we still have enough to make a push. The Vetheri are cornered." Rachel took a deep breath, the weight of their losses settling in. "We fight on," she said, her voice steady but filled with resolve. "This isn't just about us anymore. It's about every colony, every family back home. We can't let them down." Her officers nodded in agreement, and together they rallied their forces. The battle in space raged on, but humanity's determination was unshakable. The Vetheri might have been relentless, but they hadn't anticipated how far Earth would go to protect its future. The Vetheri fleet, now without their most powerful weapon, was forced to rely on brute force. Tyrak, though shaken by the loss of the cannon, was not a leader who surrendered. He issued new orders, rallying his fleet to fight with everything they had. The human ships were outnumbered, but they had one thing the Vetheri didn't: unity and a purpose that was unbreakable. Rachel's ship, the Vanguard, surged forward with a new sense of urgency. Her crew was battered but resolute. They had been tested, and they had shown they were capable of defeating the Vetheri's most deadly weapon. Now it was time to take the fight to Tyrak and his fleet. "Prepare for a direct assault," Rachel commanded, her eyes narrowing as she watched the Vetheri regroup. "We're going to make sure they never try this again." The human forces charged forward, breaking through the Vetheri lines. It was a chaotic, frantic battle. Blasts of energy filled the sky, and the hum of weapons systems could be heard in the distance. But for the first time, the Vetheri were on the defensive. They were no longer in control. Tyrak, watching from the bridge of his flagship, felt a surge of frustration. The humans had taken out his weapon, and now they were turning the tide of the battle. He had underestimated them. And now, Earth's forces were proving that they would not go down without a fight. "Rally the fleet," Tyrak bellowed, his voice laced with anger. "We cannot lose to these weaklings. We are Vetheri. We are superior." But it was too late. The human forces had gained momentum. They pressed forward with relentless aggression, using every ounce of strategy and innovation they had. Rachel, leading the charge, gave her crew one final order: target their engines, disable their ships. "We're ending this now." One by one, the Vetheri ships fell. The Vanguard fired precisely at the Vetheri vessels, their engines shuddering as explosions rippled through the fleet. The Vetheri, once confident in their superiority, were now retreating. Tyrak's flagship, the heart of his fleet, was surrounded. Rachel's face hardened. She knew they had to finish this. There was no turning back now. "We have them," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But we're not done yet." The Vethari were regrouping for one last desperate stand, but their strength was failing them. The humans had fought through wave after wave of enemy forces, and now they could see the end in sight. Tyrak was cornered. His fleet was in ruins. It was only a matter of time before the Vetheri leaders were captured or, worse, destroyed. But Tyrak, though beaten, was not easily broken. He looked out from his bridge, his mind racing. There was still one last card he could play. He activated the emergency protocols, preparing to launch his final escape plan, a weapon so powerful that even the humans would be unable to stop it. But before he could make the move, Rachel's voice crackled through his communications. "This is your final warning, Tyrak," she said, her tone cold. "Surrender or face the consequences. The galaxy has already seen what humans are capable of." Tyrak hesitated. He had seen the strength of the humans, the unyielding resolve in their eyes. He knew they would never stop until every last one of his ships was destroyed. "No," he finally growled, his fist clenched in defiance. "I will not bow to you." In that moment, the final confrontation began. It was a battle of wills as much as weapons. Tyrak's fleet was dying, but his pride still burned strong. The humans, led by Rachel, surged forward with everything they had left. But in the end, it was not the weapons that would decide the battle. It was the heart of those who fought. And humanity's heart burned brighter than ever. The final battle was here, and it was more than just a fight for survival. It was the culmination of everything Earth's forces had fought for: their freedom, their future, and their very existence. The Vetheri had underestimated humanity's resilience, and now, as their fleet lay in ruins, the time had come to finish what they had started. Rachel stood at the command center of the vanguard, her grip tight on the armrest of her chair. The battlefield was a chaos of flashing lights and exploding ships. The Vetheri fleet was broken, but Tyrak wasn't going down without a fight. His flagship, the symbol of the Vetheri's might, was still active, its engines burning with fury. The Vetheri leader had retreated to the last remnants of his fleet, determined to make one final stand. "Commander, we've almost got them," one of her officers said, his voice filled with anticipation. "We've crippled the remaining Vetheri ships, but Tyrak's flagship is still holding strong." Rachel nodded, eyes locked on the screen in front of her. She could see the flagship, massive and menacing, floating defiantly among the remains of the Vetheri fleet. The lights of battle reflected off its dark hull, a symbol of Tyrak's refusal to yield. "Prepare for a direct assault," Rachel said, her voice calm but filled with unshakable determination. "We're going in." Her crew worked quickly, the ship's engines roaring to life as they sped toward the flagship. Rachel's mind was focused. They had won the battle, but the war wouldn't be over until Tyrak was defeated. The Vetheri leader had pushed humanity to the brink. But now, the humans had the upper hand. And Rachel was not about to let this opportunity slip away. As they closed in on the flagship, the Vetheri made their final move. The remaining warships, desperate to protect Tyrak, launched a counterattack. But their forces were already too weakened to pose a serious threat. Earth's fleet was battered, but it had proven itself time and time again. And this time, they would finish it. "Take out their engines," Rachel commanded. "We need to disable their ship before they can make their escape." The vanguard fired precisely, targeting the engines of the flagship. The explosion that followed sent a shockwave rippling through space, and the Vetheri ship shuddered. The lights on the bridge flickered as the damage spread. The ship was still functional, but it was no longer a threat. "Direct hit, Commander," reported one of the officers. "Their engines are disabled. They can't escape." Rachel's eyes narrowed. It wasn't over yet. Tyrak, though cornered, would not surrender easily. He was a ruthless leader, and she knew he wouldn't go down quietly. He had one final move to make, but Rachel was ready. "We're boarding the flagship," she said, a sense of finality in her voice. "Prepare the assault teams." The Vanguard positioned itself alongside the Vetheri flagship, its docking clamps locking into place. The human forces were ready to take the fight directly to the heart of the Vetheri fleet. The battle had been long, but this was the endgame. The moment the boarding teams disembarked from the ship, a wave of tension washed over the crew. They knew what was at stake. They were stepping onto the flagship, the very ship that had been responsible for the destruction of so many human lives. The Vetheri would fight to the bitter end, but Earth's forces were not afraid. "Stay sharp," Rachel said over the comms, her voice a quiet, commanding presence. "This is where it ends." The assault teams advanced through the halls of the flagship, their weapons ready. The ship's corridors were eerily quiet, a stark contrast to the chaos outside. As they moved deeper into the heart of the Vetheri flagship, they encountered resistance. The Vetheri soldiers, though outnumbered and wounded, fought with desperation. But humanity's forces were relentless. The battle raged through the ship's tight corridors. Each room they cleared brought them closer to Tyrak. The Vetheri fought hard, but they had no chance against the humans' determination. Earth's soldiers were used to adversity, and they pushed forward, undeterred. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the assault teams reached the bridge. Tyrak was there, standing defiantly at the helm of his flagship. He turned to face them, his expression filled with contempt. Despite the overwhelming odds, he had not given up. "You humans think you've won," Tyrak sneered, his voice echoing in the quiet room. "But you are wrong. We are the superior species. We will rise again." Rachel stepped forward, her eyes locked on Tyrak. She had heard his rhetoric before, and it meant nothing now. He was beaten, and he knew it. "You had your chance," Rachel said coldly, "and you failed." With that, she gave the order. The Vetheri leader was captured, his reign of terror ended. As Tyrak was taken into custody, Rachel stood at the helm of the flagship. The battle was over. Earth had triumphed. The Vetheri had been defeated, their fleet shattered, and their leader captured. Humanity had proven that no matter how overwhelming the odds, they would fight to protect their future. As Rachel gazed out at the stars, she knew this victory was just the beginning. The galaxy had seen humanity's strength, and it would never forget. But there was still much to do. The galaxy was vast, and the peace they had won could never be taken for granted. There would always be new challenges, new enemies, and new battles to face. But for now, humanity had earned its victory. And Rachel, standing at the center of it all, knew that Earth's future was secure. For now, and for the generations to come, the aftermath of the battle was both victorious and solemn. The wreckage of the Vetheri fleet drifted in space, the silence echoing the calm that had settled over the once chaotic battlefield. Earth's forces had secured their place in the galaxy, but the scars of the war were not easily forgotten. Tyrak, the Vetheri leader, was captured and placed in human custody. But despite the victory, a lingering question remained. What came next? Rachel stood at the bridge of the Vanguard, staring out at the endless stars. The universe seemed so vast, so full of possibilities. Humanity had just proven it could stand tall against the greatest threats, but now they had to rebuild. There was still so much to do. The colonies, the ships, the infrastructure, they all needed attention. Earth was no longer just a tiny, isolated planet in the corner of the galaxy. It was now a force to be reckoned with, and the galaxy would never look at humanity the same way again. "We did it," Commander Jenkins said, walking up beside her. "We stopped them. We're safe." Rachel nodded, her expression serious. "We stopped them today, but this is only the beginning. The galaxy is a dangerous place, and we've made a lot of enemies. We can't afford to be complacent." Jenkins sighed, gazing out at the wreckage of the Vetheri ships. "You're right, But at least we know now that we're capable of more than anyone ever expected. Rachel turned to face him. We've proven ourselves. But we can't do this alone. We'll need allies. We'll need to build relationships, make sure that what happened here today isn't just a victory for Earth, but a turning point for everyone in the galaxy. As the Vanguard sailed through the debris of the Vetheri fleet, the crew worked tirelessly to ensure that the enemy's technology was studied and understood. There was so much to learn from the wreckage. So many answers to be uncovered. Earth's scientists were already hard at work on the advanced energy weapons the Vetheri had used, studying the alien technology that could revolutionize their own military capabilities. But even as humanity began to rebuild and prepare for the future, Rachel couldn't help but think about the deeper lessons they had learned. This war had not been just about military might. It had been about resilience. Humanity had been pushed to the edge, but it hadn't broken. They had proven that, even against seemingly insurmountable odds, they would fight to protect their world, their families, and their future. "Do you think they'll come back?" Jenkins asked, his voice low. Rachel glanced at him, her eyes thoughtful. "I don't know. The Vetheri might regroup, or new enemies might emerge. But Earth is ready now. We've shown them that we won't back down. And more than that, we've shown ourselves what we're capable of." Her words echoed in the minds of every soldier who had fought on that day, every commander who had led their people through the chaos. Earth was no longer a planet hiding in the shadows of the galaxy. They had shown the universe that they could stand toe-to-toe with the most powerful species, and that alone changed everything. As the days passed and Earth began to heal from the wounds of war, the leaders of the galaxy began to take notice. Earth's message had spread far and wide. No longer was humanity considered weak or insignificant. The galactic powers saw Earth as an emerging force, a force that could either be an ally or a threat, depending on how they were treated. The Galactic Council convened in the aftermath of the war, inviting Earth's representatives to join the discussions. It was a momentous occasion. For the first time, humanity would have a seat at the table of galactic diplomacy. There were those who were wary, uncertain of what this new power would mean for the galaxy. But there were others who recognized the potential for cooperation, for forging alliances that could reshape the future. Rachel, along with Earth's leaders, prepared for this historic meeting. The council room was filled with representatives from various species, each with their own agendas. Some still looked at humanity with suspicion, while others offered tentative gestures of peace. But Rachel knew that Earth's place in the galaxy was secure. It was no longer a planet to be ignored or enslaved. It was a force that would shape the future. As she entered the council chamber, Rachel took a deep breath. The weight of the galaxy's expectations hung heavily on her shoulders. But she didn't falter. She was no longer just a commander. She was a symbol of humanity's resilience, its ingenuity, and its unwavering spirit. She knew that no matter what happened, Earth would continue to thrive. The council chamber fell silent as Rachel spoke, her voice echoing through the room. "We've fought for our freedom. We've fought for our future. And now we stand ready to work with you, not as a conquered species, but as equals. We will not be your subordinates, nor your enemies. We offer cooperation, unity, and peace, but we will also defend ourselves with everything we have." Her words were met with a mixture of reactions, some nodding in agreement, others watching with wary eyes. But Rachel knew this was just the beginning. The road ahead would be long, but humanity was no longer alone. They had proven themselves capable of great things, and they would rise to whatever challenges the future brought. As the session continued, Rachel watched as the representatives of the galaxy began to consider Earth's offer seriously. The days of isolation were over. Earth was ready to be a part of something larger, but it would always stand firm in its values: freedom, unity, and strength. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson that day. Humanity was a force to be reckoned with. And though the war had ended, a new chapter had begun. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: Earth's place in the galaxy had been secured. And as Rachel stood in that council chamber, the weight of the galaxy on her shoulders, she knew one thing for sure: Earth's story had only just begun.